that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now read by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. That's pretty loud. Today I have for you Book 4 of Fate of the Jedi, Backlash by Aaron Allston. Non-spoiler wise, Vistara Kai reaches Dathomir. So does Luke and Ben. Han, Leia, they're doing stuff. They go to Dathomir for a bit. Then they go back to Coruscant. Then we have Alana. She gets her own first little side adventure. It's very okay. Very much like reminiscent of Jason and Jaina when they were little kids. We have all the political things going on still on Coruscant, because primarily all the political stuff happens on Coruscant with the Jedi and everything, and it's just, it's okay. This is a massive, 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 massive side plot. This is about 20% main story, 80%. This is the same issue that New Jedi Order had, where it started doing things that were not important to the overall story of the New Jedi Order. This is only 9 books, so it's less egregious. But still think of, we have 9 books, supposedly, to tell this great epic tale. But you did not need 9 books for this. In fact, this book could have been its own thing, set almost anywhere, outside the fact that Vistara Kai is a plot and everything. Because the whole thing is this plot around Dathomir and stuff that's going on Dathomir that would have been going on Dathomir regardless of certain aspects. So it's like, it's cool to come back to Dathomir. A lot of cool references, a lot of, nice moments between characters. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you skip this book and read like a summary on Wikipedia, or get the synopsis that like every Star Wars book always does into the next book, they slightly recount the events of the last book, which is something they tend to do, then you would not be missing much. But then what's the point of making this a whole series if you don't need 9 books, ultimately? It's the same problem that I was already feeling this. I mean, you could argue that it was important for Han's character development, but there's a lot of meandering and pointless stuff to the James Luceno duology in New Jedi Order. And then basically after Traitor, after Star by Star, you had a bunch of meandering plots. The Enemy Lines duology by Aaron Allston, the first one you may argue is more important, but the second one is just straight up a side plot. You cut that book out of the canon, it changes nothing of New Jedi Order. Is it a cool story? Sure. With what goes on in Coruscant and this big bad guy, super powerful, Darth, friggin', Nyax. But does it add to the main plot of the Yusong Vong War? Not really. It's the same thing that happens with book 17. No, 16. Yeah, the second book, and to a lesser extent, the first book of the Force Heretic trilogy, but especially the second one, as the whole book is basically Truce at Bakora 2. Like, the Vong basically don't matter. The overarching main story plot basically doesn't matter. Of course, there's stuff in there that is important for the next book simply because it's a part of a trilogy and it's a part of this greater story. But by and by, if you skip Force Heretic 2, you essentially miss almost nothing. And it is the same thing here, where you don't truly need this story to understand Fate of the Jedi, and that's what's so frustrating. Why not just do this as its own story? But instead it feels like, I want to do Courtship of Princess Leia 2, kind of, But I'm not writing my own book about that, so I'm just going to write that into this series. Like, it's so funny to me how people will, like, when you talk about Legacy of the Force, and you talk about Karen Traviss, and you talk about her Mandalorian plot, which essentially has nothing to do with the main plot, which in books 2 and 4, sorry, so books 2 and 5, no, sorry, books 2 and 8, you're full of it because it's absolutely essential to the main plot. The only place where that actually rings true to the Mandalorian plot being like completely irrelevant to the main plot is book 5. But even then, you know, it's supposed to do with Boba Fett's character development leading into the rest of the series. But regardless of that, if we're going to say that that is a meandering, ultimately unimportant side plot to the main story, then what the hell is this? Or any of the stories in New Jedi Order where it wastes our time talking about these adventures and stuff that they went on that has almost nothing to do with the Vong War. And this has nothing to do with Abeloth or really the Lost Tribe of Sith. I mean, there's some stuff in there because they have to connect it somehow because it's supposed to be a part of the series, but you could scrub clean like those 20% of the important story bits and you'd have like a perfectly fine little novel set on Dathomir again. You didn't need this to be part of Fate of the Jedi, and that's the thing that just frustrates me so much. There are some great moments in this book though, however, but ultimately, like I'm not telling you the main plot because this is what happens when I don't care about it. I don't give you the gist of it. You know, because the gist of it, like, there's stuff going on with the Night Sisters, you know, in the Dathomir. Vistara Kai is there. She's pretending to be this lost child. She's going to go live with the Dathomiri ladies. Luke and Ben know she's full of it. They're going to, you know, figure that all out. Some Lost Tribe members get involved. The Night Sisters are doing their evil, wicked thing. And that's like it. Like, it's fun. I didn't have fun. Maybe you'll have fun with it, but I just don't care. Like what does this have to do with the main plot? Because again, there's been a lot of good stuff, especially the last book by Troy Denning was a highlight so far, and so was the first book. The second book, Omen, kind of whatever. But you know, Abeloth, we're setting all this up. Like, who is this Abeloth? Like you know, and the Lost Tribe, which has just been dull so far, and you know, the political stuff's been really good, the Jedi going, I mean, but then they keep doing it over and over and over and over again. Every book, another Jedi's going crazy, and at some point I'm like, well, it was unique when you did it the first time, but now you just keep on doing it and doing it and doing it, and now I just don't care anymore. Like, it's already getting old, and we're only 4 books in, you know? So, like, I'm sitting here, like, all right, give me more like story bits to chew on that I could, you know, start to appreciate this series. And then they drop this book, which is just almost completely irrelevant. And so I'm sitting here trying to describe to you exactly what this book's about. It's Courtship of Princess Leia 2, kind of. And that's really what it is. It's set on Dathomir. It's got all the Dathomiri tropes and stuff that you're thinking of, with a sprinkle of the main plot dropped in. You know, a lot of good moments with Ben. He's a very funny character. A lot of good moments with Luke. A lot of good moments actually between Ben and Vistara too, which we'll get into in spoilers. But outside of that, other books have done that. The positives I'm giving, but better. AKA the next book that we're going to talk about. So ultimately, I'm just sitting here like, why do I care? But it's fine. Some people like it more than I will. This is purely subjective. Like, it's written fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It is a decent read. It's Aaron Allston. I mean, you can't really go wrong. But at the same time, I just find myself simply not caring. So that's pretty much it for non-spoilers, I guess. I'm going to talk about some things that I did rather enjoy. But we'll discuss that when I come back. So we'll see you in a second. All right. Bye for now. I don't completely hate the book. So I'll make that clear now that we're in spoiler sections. But I hate when a book feels like a waste of time, or that it's wasting my time, like kind of on purpose, which is kind of the design of this book, which is to tell you a fun side story to meander from the main plot. Now, I also to address that the end of this book talks about how Aaron Allston at the time had a heart attack, so that might have affected some things. But regardless of that, it seems like the point of this book was to be a meandering side plot to hold off from the main. And of course, rest in peace, Aaron Allston. The problem is with this and a New Jedi Order is that it keeps trying to tell all these, like, reminiscent side stories, of stories that you love, like Truce of Bakora, which I adore, or Courtship of Princess Leia, which I adore. But here's the thing. No matter how fun Aaron Allston's writing is, or Sean Williams, which nobody says, and Shane Dix, because they're not fun writers, or even Aaron Allston again with Enemy Lines 2. Enemy Lines 2 was a unique plot, but they decided to use a big EU continuity connection to tell that story, which, again, I applaud, and I love that. I love when EU writers do that. But again, it had nothing to do with the main plot. He could have made his own one-off novel set before or after New Jedi Order where he did that plot. He didn't have to shove that into New Jedi Order, but he did. So waste time and adds ultimately nothing, because again, you eject Enemy Lines 2, it adds nothing. And, the Force Heritage Trilogy, let's do Bakora 2, except that you don't have the charm or the same vibe as that book did. So using the location and the characters and the enemy is cool and nice and it's appreciated, but at the end of the day, you're not Kathy Tyers. You had a right balance point, but not that. And so it just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel the same. And in the same way, Aaron Allston, for as amazing as he he's not Dave Wolverton. You can't recapture what Dave Wolverton did. And so I sit here reading this, and it's fun sometimes, but ultimately feel like it's here to distract me. So the main plot can take longer to conclude. And that bugs me, objectively speaking. You can look at this book on its own as an individual story and be like, that's pretty fun. But if you're looking in terms of pacing for an entire series, like let's say this was an 45-minute to 50-minute episode miniseries on like Disney Plus or something, you'd have one episode that was basically a big waste of time to distract you from the main plot that only needed to be like 5 episodes. And that's the problem for me with this book particularly. It's not that it's horrible, but needless and ultimately pointless. But let's talk about some of the positives here. There's a nice little moment. They're talking about courtship and the events that happen within there, Han and Leia, as they're talking to Alana. And as she talks about, she almost married Isildur, Alana bittersweetly says, so either way, you were destined to be my grandmother. It's really sweet and cute, but also sad. Props. Also, I talked about a fanfiction where we learned that Zek was still alive in the adventures that he went on by Hand of Thrawn 45, but officially, up until this book, we had no idea what was up with Zek. But we learn in this book that he's alive and well and dating Tino Kaw's cousin. Dala. I just continue to love it. Everything with her. Again, the explanation for why she's chief of state. I guess because she helped Gilead Pelion a lot. It's the best I can come up with in Legacy of the Force. And so maybe that was some sort of contingency plan he put in place. I don't know, because it's democracy. They vote on this stuff. But regardless of all that, of how she actually got into office, the things they do while she's in office are great. I don't mind it. Nathal from Legacy of the Force commits suicide, so that was quite abrupt. But by Nathal, I guess. Awkward thing here to discuss, but I've heard a lot of jokes made because there's a Bothan in this series who I think is introduced here and happens to have a little bit of a romantic sort of relationship with Dala. Not that that's really addressed here, but I know it's going to be. But, guys, it's been a problem throughout all of Star Wars Winter Akbar. If we're not joking about that, okay, how about Quizux and Wedge? You want to not use those examples? How about in Stackpole's books? Corrin and the Selonians. It's a weird thing in Star Wars that this exists, but like, you can't hate on it more simply because it's Dala. To equally despise whenever they have a bestiality sort of relationship in Star Wars. Also, this is something. Don't know if this is going to be a thing, but they talk about a cult of Zizor from Shadows of the Empire, and they have Jaden Korr looking into that. And we know from Jaden Korr's duology that he's the one who deals with like weird clone shenanigans. So, is there a clone of Zizor? I don't know. I sure hope not, but maybe. Ben and Vistera get their first bits of interactions here, which are fine, but I think other books handle it better. Here it's just kind of there, and it's whatever. The best part of this book is probably when the Mandos attack the Jedi Temple, and you get a really awesome moment with Raynar Thul, who I think, out of this entire era, besides Jason Solo, is more contested. You know, there's Ben Skywalker and Raynar Thul, who've had the best character development post New Jedi Order, I feel. You know, that isn't as contentious. Like, nobody really hates on Ben Skywalker, they just don't talk about him. And then Raynar Thul, you know, from his start in Young Jedi Knights to where he is here, I think is just really great. And then Tahiri, a victim, not an abuser, when she's talking to her Bith lawyer. There's a really interesting discussion there. But that's about it. It's setting up more for Tahiri's trial, which is going to happen in other books and stuff. So those are some things that I did think were good parts of it. But overall, like I said, it's just... it is what it is. It's not phenomenal like I prefer. Next look at Allies by Christy Golden, book 5. We'll see how that goes. Until next time, may the Force be with you.